Here we are for another week, Paul. Welcome to Truth Proof live stream, everybody.
Yeah, comes around quick, doesn't it? And hey, this ain't just being nice to people. What a great bunch of people we get in this chat every week, Les. I mean, I've just said it to Rev, and I've just said it to Andrew, and you echoing the same thing. Really, thank you for support. It's great, and it just makes us want to do more, and that's what we're going to be doing in it, Les.
Yeah, and we've got a little plan together, and the plan is, I'll let you announce it, Paul.
Well, you know the days better than me what we've been kicking about, but we're going to do some more live streams, and we'll be guided by you guys as well in the chat and the people that want to contribute, because some of the new ones we're going to do will be question and answer based. So we'll be looking at names in chat, asking you what your main interest is within the subject, and offering you a chance to tell us and maybe ask us a few questions. So it'll be a little bit different. So we'll still continue with Thursdays as we're doing, and hopefully we'll put a few question and answer live streams out. So what day are we thinking, Les?
Yeah, well, provisionally we're going to try Monday evening at 7 p.m. So that's on the cards. So this next Monday coming. So Monday,
yeah, and we might try a few later ones. Did we say?
We'll see how we're going. I mean, the problem we have is UK time. We're trying to capture all you guys in the audience chat, but also capture some American support as well. But obviously, with the big time difference, it kind of puts us on a back heel on that one.
Capture, that's a good word, capturing, and we're trying to capture you guys.
Yeah, we're trying to capture you guys. Yeah, big style.
No, but if we can put a bit more out, it's good. And if people are enjoying it and people want to contribute, I think the most important thing for us, myself and Les doing these Truth Proof live streams, is audience participation. So just like tonight, Andrew's going to be a great guy to talk with. The Rev's talking. Give us some questions. And if we don't get through them all, don't punish us. We're going to do these question and answer sessions later, so you're connected with even more.
Yeah, and some of this ideas obviously kicks off is because we don't get through all the questions every week, Paul. And it's only fair to people that, you know, if they want to come back on and put that question again, if we can answer it, we'll try to.
Yeah. All good.
Having said that, then got out that's out the way. Let's have a look who's in tonight's stream. I don't know if you want to go through any of the names you can see.
Well, I will do, but please don't blame me when I don't get you all. I can only see a limited amount. So we've got South Coast, Lisa Rod, Jim Smith, Alison Buttle for doing moderating, Rivington Pike. That's Lee, Danny Egan, V. McCrinnan, and IV. I spoke to me in week. Ralph Winter, Fred Flintstone, Jack S. Simon Riley. I know there's more. Oh, Dark Angel. I know who that is. And that's going to be one of our guests on live streaming next week or two. So all good.
I can see Bob, Mally Dodgson, and that's about the only couple of disabled Welshman, Alex Thompson, yeah, and Janice Parry, Tom Britton.
Tom. Right, Tom.
Yeah, so welcome everybody to tonight's live stream. Without further ado, Paul, I will disappear and we'll bring your guest on tonight and the Revenants.
Brilliant. Hello, Revenant. Hello, Andrew. How are you doing?
All right, Paul.
Yeah, good to see you, mate. And great to see you dressed for occasion. And between myself and Rev, we'll have some challenging questions for you. And well, not challenging, but they'll be friendly. But anybody who's not familiar with Andrew, he's known as the Ghost Whisperer, and he's quite famous around his city for doing the ghost walks and around his home city of Durham. And you've collected lots of reports. You've got an avid interest in the subject, obviously, because of what you're doing. So, Andrew, welcome to Truth Proof.
Thanks for having us on here, Paul. It's a privilege to be on here.
Oh, no, seriously. I mean, before we even start, I'd like to say that well, during making a Wolflands, you've been in forests with us. You've sort of thrown yourself into everything. You go to conferences. There'll be lots of people in chat who will know you from seeing you at conference. They've maybe not seen you dressed like that, but they know this great big 6'2" guy who's sort of a big massive presence and big gentle giant. I just love being in your company, mate. So it's a pleasure to speak to you today. How did this interest begin?
I don't know. I get asked this quite often. I've tried to work out when I had an interest, but as long as I can remember, I've just been interested. Paranormal stories, weird, everything. When I was younger, my aunts used to tell us ghost stories, and they were telling us ghost stories. They were telling us about places around Burnout where I live, hoping that would keep us away, scare us. But these ghost stories, I wanted to go and see these places. I wanted to see if I could see these figures.
It fired you up more than scared you.
Yes, yeah, it did. And then as I grew up, I loved collecting ghost stories. I loved collecting people's things, what have happened to people. I loved hearing them. I loved sharing stories with people.
So give us a bit of a breakdown of one of your ghost walks then. And well, you give me a few questions, a few pointers, and earlier on this week. And how would it start, the typical walk, and how many people would be there? And are they from all sections of society, or are they all ghost hunters?
Well, the typical walk, what I do is I start the walk at a place in Durham. It's called Crook Hall. It's 3 buildings in one. There is a medieval hall, and that is the only resident medieval hall still where you could live in it in the northeast of England. Attached to that, there is a big Georgian build, and then there's a Jacobitan build as well. And this hall, it was open to the public. Then 2020 came around. Sadly, with the COVID and that, it had to close. But it's been taken over again by the National Trust, so people get a chance to have a walk around it again. So I start there. Crook Hall has at least 3 good ghost stories, and I like sharing them with that. Yeah, well, like I say, there's 3 good ones. The hall itself, back in the 90s, it was taken over by a family called the Bell family. Maggie and Keith Bell took it over, and they wrote a book called Blood, Sweat and Scones about how they took over their Crook Hall. Maggie used to bake cakes and that and sell them, scones. That's why it's say Blood, Sweat and Scones. And in that book, she tells, like, the first week they were there, she was in bed, she heard a noise. Keith's in bed next to her, she heard a noise, and then she felt somebody sitting on the edge of the bed. Nobody else was in the house, so she eased herself up, making sure Keith hasn't getting out of bed. Sitting at the edge of the bed was a woman. As she eased herself further up, this woman just disappeared. Now, this woman is supposed to be the White Lady of Crook Hall, and she was supposed to be the niece of a man by the name of William Bellingham. Now, he wasn't a very nice person, and he thought he was the most important person in Durham. He was the most important person in Crook Hall. There's one day he's going up the stairs, she's coming down the stairs, he's just pushed her out of the way, supposedly. She's fallen, supposed to have broken her neck, and she's died. But now she is seen wandering around the hall.
Right.
People hear the sound of a heavy, silky type skirt. And there's a staircase, it's a blocked off staircase now. If I went in 3-4 steps, I would be hitting me head off the top of the ceiling. But people sit, there's a little rocky chair, people sit there, they hear the noise of this swishing skirt, and then they see legs coming down the stairs, a woman's legs coming down the stairs. Like I say, there's no way anybody could hide and sort of try and trick you, but these legs are described coming down the stairs. Also, the medieval hall, they use it, the Bell family, when they had it, they used to use it for a wedding reception.
Right.
And Maggie says there was one day, the guests in the gallery were here having the pre-wedding meal drinks. The bride and groom's out in the garden because it's a beautiful garden. The guests hear the noise of a swishing skirt. They turn around thinking the bride's coming in. Turn around, there's nobody there. But in the hall where they're going to have the banquet, they hear a clashing and banging sound, they rush in. All the tables, what they've got set up, the cutlery, the plates, the glasses, everything, that's all smashed on the floor and the tables are turned over.
How long ago is this, Andrew?
This happened in about the 90s.
So it's not long
this
ago.
one was
sorry,
not that long ago.
Sorry, I know you'll pick story up, but have you any views on this, Rev?
About, well, I find it quite.
It's the noise that's I find fascinating, that we've got this transparent.
Yeah,
you know,
it's you quite often see apparitions and ghosts and stuff, but the sounds are somewhat different, aren't they? You know what I mean? It's the sound of the petticoats and the heavy skirts moving across the stairs is, it's interesting. It shows that it's able to project itself on more than just one level.
Yeah. There's a physicalness in there almost. Yeah. Sorry to cut through you there, Andrew.
No problem at all.
So the tables had been turned over, the glasses smashed.
Just everything smashed on the floor. But there was no way anybody could have done that. No way anybody could have rushed in, turned the tables over, and not been caught. And the wedding was more or less ruined because all these tables were smashed.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, do you want to jump? Shall we jump back to the hall, or do you want to tell us a few more examples of that location?
No, with the hall itself, also in there is another ghost what's supposed to be seen, and that is supposed to be of a night. There is a bit of alcove, and story goes there was a night somebody visiting the hall. The Lord at the time, he had held a banquet for this night. They had a good time. However, the knight started flirting with the Lord's wife, which didn't go down well with the Lord.
That's not
at the end of the night. No. At the end of the night, supposedly the Lord went with some of his knights, grabbed this visiting one, give him a good hiding, tied him up, and then put him in the alcove and bricked the alcove up, and just left him there to die. Now the story goes that 200 years later they were doing some renovation work, and they took the bricks away, and the skeleton fell out. Now people, when they go in this alcove, sometimes see a figure of a knight standing in the alcove, and they think the Crook Hall's having a reenactment on that. See some of the workers dressed up as knights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this man is bending over as though he's in pain. They go over to make sure he's okay, and he just disappears.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Unrelated to that, then, is it a common thing bricking people into walls? And I've got a reason for asking it. East Yorkshire, we've got Burton Agnes Hall, and there's the Screaming Skull, and they found a skull bricked into a wall. There's a story to it, and I should have done a bit of research before speaking about it. But that's somebody's head that's been bricked into the wall.
Yeah, wait, that one, the Burton Agnes one. If my memory serves us right, there was 3 sisters, and they loved the hall. And I can't remember the youngest or older sister. She really loved it, and she helped design it. But she went and she got attacked, and sadly she died. But before she died, she says, "My skull is never to leave this hall.
Really?
I want my head to be stayed there." So the sisters agreed, and then when she died, they just buried her, and there was loads of noises and smashing and bangings. And eventually, they're supposed to have gone, dug up the coffin. The body is okay because she's only been buried a few weeks, but the head, it's been severed, and the skin's all off, so it's just the skull. So they took the skull and put it in, and over the years, sometimes people would move the skull, and once they moved the skull, there was noises, clashes, and bangs in the place, and then eventually, so it didn't get moved again, they bricked it in to the hall.
Right? Yeah, I'm interested in that story, and it's literally 4 miles from my home, and you know loads more about it than me, Andrew. So I just didn't know. So, what is a ghost, Andrew? It's not a trick question. What is a ghost? Is it and this is from Al Carter, our mutual friend. What exactly are they? Are they souls? Or are they energy? And I'll throw that out to Rev as well. What I don't know.
Yeah.
Go on, Rev.
Well, my understanding of what I've seen with regards to apparitions and ghosts is, if you imagine we're able to send pictures, like we are now, and crystalline structures that are in the stone that surround towns, cities, houses, stuff like that, it seems that they collect like a memory. If you think about your SIM card in your phone, it's just a piece of silica. It's just a crystallized piece of silica. But yet we can do all these things on it, and it seems that might just be because when some quite confrontational, dramatic, if you die in a quite abrupt way, it seems that energy seems to stay, or part of it gets transferred to that area somehow. And that's kind of how I'm understanding what ghosts are, or what the apparitions are. So that's my view on that.
Yeah. I would wonder, why do some of them seem to almost have intelligence, and some of them just seem like what you're describing, some kind of imprint, fabric of stone. And what's your views, Andrew?
Like, some's very similar to Revenants. That sort of like what you're describing as the stone tape effect.
Yeah.
And like you said about the quartz and that, the iron and stuff like that, in the stone, it's supposed to hold memories. And every so often, if the atmosphere is right, these memories get played. The people walking through, and also they say, you said with murder or something like that, it's a real strong impulse of energy, and so that is held there, and just every so often you see a replay. I mean, like there's some ghosts where if you go check the stories, when they originally start, there's a full apparition, and then they become a bit transparent, and they get less and less. Like a tape recorder, if you put a video tape constantly playing, eventually it fades away.
It fades, yeah. And I love that analogy, what he's just said there, Rev. An impulse, a really strong impulse of energy. I suppose we're looking at violence in some instances, is going to leave a bigger impression than just sort of sat around somebody's bedside and they slip away. I'm trying to say it as nice as we can, because we realise we're dealing with death at end of day. But yeah, you can imagine that would create some kind of impression on something, can't you? Yeah, it's fascinating. I've never thought of it like that.
If you imagine, like when you see people going, like the apparitions of people that appear to be just doing the day-to-day passing, so you see them on a certain point, that's, like if you go to work, you usually go the same way, don't you?
Yeah.
I think it's probably like that, which is why, and like Andy's saying, it seems to be full apparitions, and then they slowly fade, don't they? Over time, people see slightly different versions of them and less of them.
But it is over a long time, though, isn't it, Rev, when you think about it? Because some of these ghost stories are hundreds and hundreds of years old. So, and what did you say, Andrew, about the weather conditions? Did you say, or at the time? Do you think that can make these things stronger?
Yes, I think certain types of weather conditions, the atmosphere, and that it sort of affects. Yeah.
Well, it's the same with full moons, isn't it? The energy. If you talk to any copper, they always say they have a spike of stuff happening around the full moon. They always...
the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. So we're thinking on the same lines there, mate. Yeah, because I've spoke to them and they've said full moon. Let's expect a busy night tonight, kind of thing. Yeah. And strange how that happens, but there's got to be something to it, aren't there? There's got to be. So. As when you're on your ghost walks and you've got a group of people, typically how many roughly? Just
averages about 10 or more.
So you got 10 people.
It could be, yeah.
how many people on them walks have actually, they're listening to Andrew Ross, the Ghost Whisperer, tell these amazing accounts walking through the city. How many people have actually experienced something on the walk?
With the walks we've done, there's maybe only 5 or 6 people that experienced anything when we've been on the walk. What they've told me about.
Yeah.
They may have experienced something, gone home and never said anything. One, we were doing, stopped. Some of the places I stopped because of the view of the cathedral. I love the cathedral. I love Durham City. I'm a bit ashamed at the moment how the council's going on with it. It is taking a downturn, but it is still a beautiful city. But I stopped for the views. Some of the places I stopped, there is stories linked to it. But I was telling the story, and this woman kept turning around. And once I finished the story, she says, I can hear voices behind us. She says, I can hear a man and a woman's voice. And she says, it sounds as though they're ill. I said, wait, that's a bank side. I says, further up the top, right way up the top, there is a path. She says, no, the sound was right near us, right next to us. And we had a look at the torches to see if we could see anything. She couldn't, and she said she felt as though there was somebody or something behind her.
Presence.
Yeah, presence. Another one, we walk around. There's a certain spot, I don't want to see it where it is. There's a certain spot we'll go around, and there's a few people have experienced a horse and cart coming through. Now, one of the stories I do tell is about a horse and cart, but the site where they experiences it is nowhere near it.
Right.
But there is a few who have experienced that there, and I'm keeping a check to see how many there is, to see if there's any correlation, to see if there's more and more people pick up on that. But I don't tell them where it is.
That was going to be my question. Do they get a little guide to say where things are happening on the walk, or that it's all the green as grass, most of them, when you're walking around with them?
Some are great. I mean, some of them, 90% of the people who come on the tours are from Durham or the surrounding areas, and a lot of them still don't know a lot of stuff what has happened in Durham. Some know some of the stories, or versions of the stories. Some have told us things like I said, things about what's happened to them. And like one, there was not in Durham, there was a young lad. Because I always ask if anybody's had any experiences. And this young lad, he said he was working in a pub, and this pub, just down the road, there's a case of a ghost what's supposed to be there. This woman, she was supposed to be getting married. She didn't want to marry the person she was going to be married to. She wanted to marry somebody else. So she went and hid in a chest. When she's climbed up the chest, which is in the attic, the lid's shut and it's locked. So she hasn't been able to get out. So sadly, she's died. The family's done a search for her. Haven't even thought of going up in the attic, and thought she's done a runner.
Right.
She was found years later. But anyway, the story that is supposed to be linked to it, every now and again, people, for some reason, within the woods just nearby, see a white stag. Now, the young lad who was saying, he says he was walking to work one morning, and he says, as he was coming through, he says, stop. And do you know when the Oz effect, and just everything stops, all the noise. He says just walking along, he says, I could hear the birds singing. He says, I could hear the wind in the trees, everything. He says, then all of a sudden, he says, everything just changed. He says, it just went silent. He says, but got very bright. He says, and then he says, I saw this white stag, and the white stag just walked across. He never knew anything of the story. Went there to work. He told his colleagues. The colleague says, when such and such comes in, you want to talk to him. He had a word with him. He'd seen exactly the same place where he said it was the same thing. The noise stopped. The colour changed. He says the colours became very bright, a golden type colour, and this white stag walked across.
It's kind of fascinating because there's so many links to other types of phenomena there, aren't there? You know what you call it, the Oz effect, or other people, I call it the lower silence, and that's impressed upon the area or upon the person observing it. But we hear about that in forests, we hear about it on cliff tops. Loads of people, UFO phenomena. So So to both of you, what do you think that we have got a common link, obviously, but anybody got any idea what that link could be? I'd love somebody to say, yeah, they have, because I ain't got a clue.
Yeah, well, all right, I'll go for it.
Yeah, good.
It's the frequency thing again, isn't it? It's like when people hear that bing. If you imagine it like a cocoon surrounding you, or an orb surrounding you, that's how it almost seems like you're completely isolated from everything else around, but what's going on directly to you. And it happens with many different types, doesn't it? You know, with all the different accounts.
Whatever it is impressing itself onto the individuals. But is it on individual, or do you think it's on the area as a whole? Like it's like that little bubble of strangeness that's impressed on that area.
Well, that's unless you can find somebody that's in that area and had a similar experience and felt that, you're never going to know, are you? Because you're just seeing it for yourself.
We're on the same lines with what we think it is, but it's just that we don't know how far it expands. Is it just that's what I'm saying? Is it just for that individual, or is it on the area? But it must expand away from individual, because people talk about that silence. Birds stop singing. You know, in other countries, crickets stop making noise. So it does have a bigger effect than just the individual, doesn't it? Yeah. So
I mean, it certainly seems to be. I mean, if we think about the frequency, it's like the dawn chorus, isn't it? Everything's not singing, and then it all happens at the same time. It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever seen when a heartbeat starts in a fetus. I think it's about 10 weeks. It's like somebody's just gone pop, and it just suddenly starts.
Yeah.
It's
and life is given. Yeah. So we've experienced. There's the experience of this Oz factor, the lower silence in these areas as well. Then, and you've not pre-warned anybody, Andrew, about any of these things. We know some of them could know. No. You know, they might have done a bit of. Obviously, if they're on a ghost walk, they're going to have some kind of interest in it. Usually.
Yes, they do. But like I said, like with the horse and cart, I know where that is happening. If somebody comes to us and says, "I've had a experience. I'm standing here," it describes it. I'll say, "Wait, yes, I've heard that before."
So let's just move on a bit then. So tell us about Shincliffe Lane, if you can, please.
Yeah, Shincliffe Lane. Shincliffe itself means haunted place or demon place, demon hill. And this is supposed to be Anglo-Saxon name. There was supposed to be an imp within the area. Just a bit further up the road, there is Tursdale. And that is supposed to be Troll's Deal. Troll, like under the bridge, Troll. Now, Shincliffe, it was supposed to be an imp. This spirit, demon, devil, whatever, used to cause problems for the farmers. On a night here, on the morning, if they got up and the cows were lame, that said that the imp had been shooting flint arrows at the cows, and it made it go lame. Also, the people, the farmers, used to complain of waking up and with this awful figure on the chest, jumping up and down on the chest, but like the old hag syndrome,
the incubus, succubus,
the incubus, succubus, around that area. But around the area, there's a lot of interesting names. Shincliffe, where Shincliffe Village is, less than a mile, there is an old Iron Age settlement. There is a place called Maiden Castle, and it's supposed to be an Iron Age settlement on the top. The Romans were around the area and that. And there's a lot of stuff there. There's a few stories within Shincliffe. The one I like to share on the walk is about Shincliffe Lane. Back in the 1920s, Shincliffe Lane for a time had a reputation of being very haunted. People, wasn't many cars about, but the cars, when they were travelling up, they would see this figure shoot past them. They would hear chains rattling and a can whistling. Like a whistling sound. They would see this. People on bicycles, they would see it. People on bicycles would fall off and hurt themselves because of this figure, what they'd seen. People walking would walk 2 miles further around than come down Shincliffe Lane. Eventually, the police came out to check to see what was going on. Like the day when you phone the police or get in touch with the police, they take ages to come out. Back then, it took them ages. It was about a month before they came out to effect. They have a look. The police officer travelling down, when he sees this figure shooting in front of him, gets a fright, falls off his bike, gets himself sorted. Thinks, right, I better see what's going on here. As he's getting up, he hears noise in the undergrowth. So he starts heading over it, and then he's laughing, he hears people running off. Now, what happened was the children from Shincliffe had tied a rope from one side of the road to the other.
Right.
And they put the pulley system on. And on it, they put a big heavy duffel coat. Then over the top of the duffel coat, they'd put in a white sheet. Inside, they'd put in the chains. And they'd also done a tin can. So when they pulled it, the wind going through it made a whistling or a screaming noise. So that was Shincliffe Ghost.
Yeah, so it's a man-made ghost.
Yeah. A man-made ghost, yeah. I mean, so I just like sharing that story because I find it funny.
Yeah.
Just, these people, sort of, the lads were eventually caught and they were prosecuted for being a nuisance. And in fact, on one of my ghost walks, I was telling that story, and this woman finished the story. She took us one side. She says, "That story you've just told," she says, "that was my granddad." She says, "My granddad and his mates." She says, "My granddad used to always tell us stories," and she says some of them were tall tales. She says, "So I never knew which ones were true and which ones weren't." And he told us about the time he scared Shincliffe Lane, him and his mates, with this ghost going backwards and forwards. But down at Shincliffe, there is a white lady what's supposed to go along is an old railway track. Will be the oldest railway track in Durham. Now it's just a footpath. But back in the 1800s, the railway track, people used to also use it as a shortcut to get from one village to another village. And there was a young lass, she was caught in a lad in a village about 4 miles away. So what they would do is, he'd come from his village, she would come from Shincliffe, meet in the middle on a Sunday, then go into Durham for the afternoon. This one day, she went, he's not there. So she thinks he's dumped her. She goes home, she's not very happy, she's crying her eyes out. The next week, she thinks, maybe there was something wrong and he didn't turn up. So she went again. Again, he didn't turn up. So this time, she says, right, I'm going to go to his house, see what's going on. He went to the house, knocked on the door. The brother says, you better come in. The young lad, he worked on the pit. I mean, most men at the time, if they weren't working on a farm, they were in the pits. There'd been an accident, he'd been hurt in the pit. They thought he was going to survive, but sadly on the Thursday before she came to the house, he had passed away. But she was devastated because the brother also told her that he was going to ask her to marry him.
Right.
So she went home and she was heartbroken because this was a love of her life. She went home and the next day she got up and she decided she knew what she was going to do. She went onto the tracks, waited for a truck coming, stepped in front, and she was killed on them tracks. Now, there is supposed to be a figure of a woman seen walking along them tracks, or along the lane.
And do you know, it's not some kind of light bulb moment in my head, but there's a common theme of tragedy with all the ghost stories, isn't there? You know, it's which we'll touch on in a minute. But do you have any? Is there any? Obviously, we've got the manufactured ghost story, the young lads sort of creating the ghost with the rope of their own. But are there any ghost stories that are more light-hearted, or do you find? I'm not wanting one. I'm just saying, do you find as a whole that most of them are tragic stories?
I think most of them are tragic. Yeah, I mean, like Reverend said before about
the imprint,
the tragedy leaving an impression, so which causes the ghost. So I mean, that young lass, she was in total turmoil. She's lost her life, and that the energy in that is just so big. She's left the imprint there.
So are we saying then that it's got to be, as a rule, it's got to be tragedy that can create the ghost? What do you think, Rev?
Well, there's a few variations, isn't there? So there's when somebody dies, there's about 8 hours in which they can come back, and that sort of seems to be they sort of stay within themselves, as it were. Then after that, it's almost like there's almost like a few weeks where people sort of see the relatives or whoever it is that's passed seem to turn up. But then after that, it seems to ebb away a bit. So I think that's how sort of the Indian that part of the world, that's one of their beliefs, is how it happens like that. The Mexicans have 3 deaths. So you have a physical death where you pass, but they still consider you alive. And then, as in Mexico with the Day of the Dead, where they bring the dead out, they even have dinner with their dead relatives, and then they put them all back afterwards. So once that's passed and the body ceases to exist, that's the second death. The third death is where the memory of that person is forgotten, and at that point, that's when it's gone. So maybe that has some effect on how you see, like we were talking about the apparitions, the different stages that we see. So when you first pass, that energy is more prevalent, and as it slowly ebbs and your memory fades, and different, depending on how big your family is and your connections, it slowly disappears, and most of us will be forgotten about eventually.
Yeah. How much of that do you think? Because the way you've just put it kind of works in my head. But how much of that do you think is also down to the passing of somebody and the family focusing on that somebody, and it's actually the intent of the people who are still here in the present that are holding that in the present, if you know what I mean? And like you just said, as the weeks passed, it dissipates and it goes. I mean, could it be us that are keeping them there? Yeah, I know we're only throwing ideas about.
I mean, it's easier to make energy connect when it's coming from both sides, isn't it?
Mm.
So if both parties are feeling that way, then yeah, it's because when you lose somebody close to you, it's very personal. It's a lot of emotions. There's a lot to deal with, and maybe it's part of the way that we deal with stuff. Is, I mean, I can remember when my dog died. One of my dogs died, right? My first dog, and I could hear him barking for days afterwards, and I couldn't work out if it was in my head. And then my dad said the same. And my little lad, he when one of my other dogs died, he used to say, "Dad's off to work and Ozzy's with him. He's in back of the truck." And it's now, is that just because that's how he always saw me leave the house, or is it he was picking up on that? I don't know, but yeah.
And
it's
and the barking then. Well, obviously you didn't hear it audibly, but you could hear it inside your head.
Yeah. And my dad said he heard it as well. So, but it sounded like when I stood in the kitchen, it sounded like he was up in you could hear footsteps and all sorts. It was really odd.
Any
views on that, Andrew?
What the Reverend's just said, over our lives, we've had a few dogs, and one, our socks. It's very similar to what happened to Revenant. We sadly had to get socks put down. He was 18, 19-year-old. And me and my mum took him to the vets, got him put down, came back on the night time. When he was alive, what he used to do was he'd go upstairs to go to bed, and we'd shut the landing door, the door at the bottom of the stairs. And then he'd come down. When he was younger, he would scratch at the door, but he became lazy. All he would do was just give one bark to be back in the room. Yeah. So me and my mum was sitting, and like the Reverend said, we heard that one bark. I heard it, looked at my mum, and I said, "Did you hear that?" And she says, "Yeah." He did. He came and he barked again. Yeah. I think they do. I think they do come back, and it's. I mean, they spend.
So, well, why shouldn't the ghosts of animals be just as important as the ghosts of humans? It's fascinating. What you're on about with hearing your dog, and I don't think this is ghostly, but I keep thinking I'm hearing a phone call, and I don't mean tonight, but for weeks now, and it's not ringing. I'm stopping and thinking I can hear a phone. Probably, I'm just imagining it, but just saying that now. But just an interesting little story, and I know that we're going to cover some more with you, but Mary won't mind me saying this. When Mary's mum passed away, a long time ago, 30 years ago, 30 years ago, typical terraced house, the mining family, and you walk straight through front door into front room, and then there's a second room where they'd sit with big sort of fire with little range on it and sinking corner. Mary went to help her dad do some her mum's clothes. She said, "I'll go and sort all my mum's clothes out and everything." And I was left with girls, our little girls. And she went up to her mum's, and she said, strangest things happened. I said, "Why?" She said, "I went into the front room, and they had a cabinet, glass display cabinet, a couple of doors at bottom, and there'd be darts, trophies, pool, snooker, you know the kind of cabinet. And on top of it, I've told this story before, but I know you've not heard it, Andrew. There was like you'd have the air-ons on a push bike with gas canister, the red, just the red horn, no gas canister. She said, "I'm putting mum's clothes in order and sorting them out, and dad's in other room." She says, and I just heard this. So I'm looking around, you know where we're going with it anyway. And she said, I went to the cabinet and I picked it up, no canister on it, just the horn, it's not got some kind of whistle inside it that can make a noise, and it's in my hand. She said, I can feel it vibrating and making this noise. She says, and I went in, I says, Dad, look at this. She said, and it just stopped. And we know that there's no proof. What Rev's saying and what you're saying and what I'm saying is all ingrained in here. But these things are happening, and they're happening to everybody. I bet everybody's got some kind of strange, quirky story. Most people don't want to talk about them because they find it embarrassing, or if it's deeply personal to you because it's with one of your loved ones, last thing you want is somebody having a laugh at you as you're saying it. So you keep it to yourself, don't you? But these things are happening. Do people open up on the ghost walks then, Andrew, and tell you stuff?
Some do, yes, some do. So, some ask for advice, and like I said, look, I'm really advising that I can't really give. Some asking for which mediums to go to and stuff like that, and straight away I said, look at that, I don't do anything like that. I because you could tell someone to go to a medium, and they could turn out to be a total charlatan.
Yeah.
So just advice. But yes, some do tell us stories, things what have happened, and some of them maybe it's happened years ago, but because I've got interest in it, they can tell us without us laughing at them.
Yeah,
it's that sort of relief.
Do you think that's the big thing then? Yeah. It is. It's that stigma, isn't it, of having the fear of telling somebody. Yeah, because it's deeply personal to you, and it's impacting on you. You know what I mean? And it last thing you want is somebody, even if they just roll their eyes and go, "Oh yeah, what were you drinking, or what were you smoking, or," and that's kind of thing. You think, no, this is real. It's been in my mind now for the last 30 years, and I thought I've confided in you, and this is what's happened. And here's Les. Les has got a story to tell us. Have you, mate? Les, no sound, mate. No sound. Les, no sound. That's better.
We have some questions, and some good questions are coming, and thanks for the questions, guys, tonight. Dark Angel is asking, has Andy ever encountered something that was supernatural but not spirit?
Good question.
I've only had a few experiences, and I wouldn't say sort of anything supernatural. I just don't know. I can't answer that.
How do we separate supernatural from spirit? Are they one in the same? I mean, and I might be offending some people by saying that. Anybody?
I think that there's definite supernatural can cover a wide variety. It usually seems to focus on energy-based phenomenon, does supernatural, whereas an apparition is usually seeing a figure or legs or something like that, isn't it? You know, so there is a difference.
Yep.
But it would appear that everything is interconnected in some way. It has to be, because we're all here. You know, we're all trapped here, so we're all on this planet, and there is a connection between everything, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay. I've got to thank Danny Egan for the super sticker, £5. Thank you, Danny, for that tonight. Dark Angel, another question from Dark Angel.
Don't just use Dark Angels, Les. We've got to have other people here.
I'm only going down a list, Paul. That's all I can do. Dark Angel, has Rev experienced any out of the body experiences? That's for you, Rev.
Yeah. I've told Paul about this, so I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I was sat up, I was laid in bed, and I sort of laid on my side looking at the telly, which was on the opposite wall, and I was having a smoke and just drifting off to sleep. I think I was watching Question Time, which was on a Thursday night, and the next thing I know is I am traveling through space, being shown how universes and galaxies are created. And when I woke up, it was, so say it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock. It was after the news when, so it'd have been 11 o'clock, wouldn't it, when Question Time was on. When I woke up, it was, I don't know, I think about 5, 6 in the morning. What I was smoking was still lit, and it hadn't burnt down. And it was just strange. But the whole, had the cigarette not had been gone, I'd have just thought I dreamt it. But the fact that it had been burning for nearly 7, 8 hours or whatever it was, it's just crackers.
Brilliant. So do you put that down to anything in your life, Rev?
Well, that's the closest I can think of. You know, it was an out-of-body experience, but my physical body was still where it was. It was almost like time had frozen, but moved, and I was just popped back at the same point where I left.
Yeah,
but
because
hours later,
a lot of the out-of-body experiences that I've read about and seen people's accounts, they're either gravely ill or about to, or they're in a terrible accidents, and the body's left, the soul, as it were, has left the body, and they're having all these experiences. So nothing, you wasn't ill or anything like that, Rev?
No, I was fine. It was just it was confusing to try and understand what it was, if it was a dream. I mean, I'm still not sure, but the fact that my smoke had not burnt down and it was still lit, it was, odd.
I'll keep it brief, this, because I know we want to get through some questions, but I'm going to have to get to this one in a future live stream. Guy, I know that we're in an high security prison. Good friend, to be honest with you, good friend. And he were with an inmate and a cellmate, and something happened to them, and they were smoking, and they'd made their sandwiches, and they were well versed in what they were going to do, and they kept some food for earlier in the day, which they added to the tea, and they had these sandwiches, and something happened. I'll go into this story later, and they lost about 8 hours of time, and I don't mean through doing drugs or anything. There were no drugs involved. I know this man, and there were no drugs involved. But when they came to, or when everything sort of snapped back to normal, and it was time to get up, the cigarettes were still burning, and so that's it. Just come to me, and you know what I mean. It's I'll get the full breakdown on this without saying any names, and we'll do this one, and because he's given me all the account. Sorry, go on, Les.
Brilliant, yeah. And the next question is already on the screen from Andrew Sheehan. Has Andy ever seen any poltergeist activity?
No. I'm saying no. I'm a member of a group called Twilight Worlds, and we were on an investigation once in Edinburgh Vaults, and we're with another group of people, and when we were there, apparently there was some poltergeist activity, stones being hid, and that was the only thing. I mean, we went up to see if we could find anything. We couldn't find anybody. We couldn't find anybody sort of who was chucking stones, but there was supposed to be stones had been thrown in the vaults.
I mean, that's a place I'd love to visit myself. And other people have reported lots of things happening down there, aren't they, Andy?
Yeah.
The stones, Andrew, were the stones warm, or did anybody comment on when they picked them up?
A couple of people who did pick them up said it felt warm. I know when the reports, when you have a report, the stones are supposed to be warm, or any object what's supposed to come, it is supposed to be warm, and they said it was warm. And I mean, in the vaults, when you were in the vaults, it was a cold place. I mean, you could see your own breath. It was that cold.
Interesting, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah, I've got a question from Gavin. Still crazy. Could you ask if the magnetic field could have something to do with ghosts? I know you touched on this earlier. Anybody want to run with that one?
Well, if we're looking at EVP meters and things that are detecting magnetism and electronic differences, then there's something there. But go on, Rev. I'm cutting across.
I was going to say, if you think about the Earth's magnetic fields, the Van Allen belts that surround us and emanate from the poles, as we're told, certain times of year, these are more active. They kick out more of this frequency, this electronic field, and with like the Northern Lights, that's what you see, where the frequency is dipping in and it's waving and it's moving. And a lot of reports happen when high magnetic energy is prevalent. So
it's in the atmosphere. It's the ionization, isn't it?
Yeah, but they also use, as you know yourself, your battery power on your videos and stuff. When you're investigating stuff, it dies. And I remember you telling me about something a couple of months ago when you were on the cliffs, and you'd come back and it was full again.
Absolutely dead. Steve Ashbridge took a thermal camera up there, brand new one, fully charged, flat. Andrew Collins went up. There'll be some people in chat who'll know who Andrew is, and he took a whole array of recording equipment up, and that went flat. We've had cameras go flat. Interestingly, the thermal camera that I'm using has never gone flat. But we've had camcorders that have been fully charged just deplete. And I know cold weather, Les might have a better answer for this than me, but I know cold weather sort of helps depletion at battery, I think, but not from a full charge with a battery that probably should last you 45 minutes. In 10 minutes, it's dead. It's like there is something strange depleting it.
Okay, so do you want another question?
Please, yeah, let's fire away.
Okay. Let's have a look then. Okay, we'll go with Fred Flintstone is asking question. Are poltergeists the spirits of dead people?
I'm leaving it to you two, because otherwise I'm going to be cutting across everybody.
What do you reckon, Andrew?
It's hard to say. I mean, I know the same with poltergeist that it is usually a person within the house who is traumatized or going through a certain stage in their life, and they can't express the emotion, so they express it outwardly, which is causing these poltergeist activity. But then again, I mean, some of the things you hear about the poltergeist and that things happening, like that, like I said about the stones at the vaults. In the vaults itself, there is many reports of them stones being thrown. So, is it the place what's causing it? Is it a person whose emotions, or is it a sort of like a spirit? A spirit trying to communicate, trying to sort of.
Or is it a spirit feeding off our energy? You know, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I don't mean in every poltergeist case, but I must admit the poltergeist case or accounts fascinate me a lot more than the ghost accounts. But in a lot of instances, and I've said this before, it kind of starts amoeba-ish. And people, you know, you perceive something move or you hear a strange noise, and then you switched on to it. And the more you look at it, it's almost like what we've said before. The more you look at the phenomena, the more the phenomena looks back at you and has an interaction, and it grows. It grows in intelligence as well. And you know, have you experienced poltergeist type experience, Rev? Have you come across all like that?
Yeah, I've had a few instances. A friend of mine who's a member of the Blue Angels motorcycle club, he had a tattoo shop that I used to go and hang out in, and he lived a couple of doors down from me. So sometimes he'd give me the keys because he liked to hit it hard and party as these bikers do. So one morning, gone down into the shop to open it up for him, and a couple of chairs, a crucifix, and I think there was a doll, because he had quite a lot of various adornments in the tattoo shop, all stacked up in the back room in front of the cellar door with a crucifix upside down on the top. He swears to me that he hasn't set me up, and I believe him because he's a gentle soul. Is this fella, as tough as he is, he, you know, he wouldn't wind you up. He'd tell you because he'd find it more funny after seeing your reaction, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that was really odd, and I don't perceive the poltergeist activity. And interestingly enough, a couple of shops down from his was a British Heart Foundation shop, and they went through a period of a few months where every morning they'd come in and all the dummies, the shop dummies, were all facing each other like they were all having a conversation. They then took the dummies out because they were getting freaked out by it. But to me, the poltergeist activities, it seems more like part of a deception. It's a lot of it's to scare you, a lot of it's to wind you up, and a lot of it's quite creepy and it's got a sick sense of humor. So if it is the energy of somebody that's passed, then they obviously were a bit more to the dark side than the light, because it seems that way. There doesn't seem to be anything good come from the poltergeist, and like with you, Paul, with the stones that keep dropping out of nowhere and stuff.
Thinking about them, yeah.
My wife, she used to work in boots, and she'd get her hair twiddled and stuff, and she lost a pen once. Oh, no, it wasn't a pen, it was a name badge. It had gone missing, and you know, Alice has got quite an unusual name, and she was fed up with it, and she couldn't find it anywhere, and she was walking up the back stairs to go to the canteen, and she just said, "Look, just give us it back." And it got wherever it came from, it got launched at her, and it landed in the corner, and it's like, that's strange. So that's kind of like, it's weird. Like we talk about with the Bigfoot and the cryptids that seem to come in and out. We've both experienced pulls on a shirt when we've been in woods and stuff out of nowhere. There's now that I've been snagged on because I've been walking down the middle of a ride. It's clear. It seems more like it's trying to put the frighteners on you, whereas the apparitions seem to be just doing what they were doing anyway.
Yeah, you're right. And providing Andrew's all right for a moment, I'll just jump to Hummonby. And Andrew, one of the witnesses, and the coins that used to drop out of the air, and the gravel, and the coffee jars, all sorts of things literally dropped, and there's no other floors above them. But on this, they warned him, or the boss warned him to stop taunting the phenomena. And he was saying, give me lottery numbers if you're all so powerful, and do this if you can do this. And he said, we looked at him, and he's spinning around on the floor saying, I've been hit. And like, once again, a story I've told before, he said, and Andrew says to me, I just looked, and it was coming towards me full circle, like almost in slow motion, hit him in forehead. He said, and it was warm, and it stuck to his forehead. I don't mean it stuck and hissed and burnt, but it stuck to his forehead. I mean, this guy lives about 200 yards away from me. If he's watching this now, that's exactly what he told me. And is that poltergeist activity? There's something with intent. There's definitely an intelligence there, isn't there? And it's not a good intelligence, or it's not a good intent that's coming from it, as you've just said, Rev. So before
Okay,
I
might get this question in from Lisa Rod. Lisa is asking, Andy, what's the most unnerving haunting that you've covered?
Thank you, Lisa, because I was going to ask that question next.
The most unnerving one, it's quite hard to see. There is one, because of personal reasons, I wouldn't want to discuss. Apart from that one, there was a thing what once happened to me, and I still sometimes have nightmares about it.
You feel okay telling us?
College. Yeah. I'm okay telling you. I was at college. I was at Hoffel College in Durham. It's just outside of Durham, and we have different dorms. And every so often, every term, you either had the same room, or sometimes you got moved to a different room. And this time, I'd been moved to a different room. And in the room late at night, I hadn't had anything to drink. Got to bed. The room, when I was lying in the bed, the windows in front of us, door behind us, me alarm clock to the side of us. I'd been in the bed maybe half an hour or so, and you know when you feel a presence or something in your room, I felt as though there was somebody in my room. I went to turn, and in my head it said, "Don't turn." It says, "If you turn, you're dead." So the rest of the night, I watched that clock, seconds just tick by. It took forever, and I waited until the dawn came up. Once I saw the dawn, I turned around. It's the only thing what's really ever sort of really freaked us out. I just don't know what it was. This feeling, I got a real bad feeling. If I turned around, I was dead. I could feel something or someone in my room.
And yeah, I mean, and you work. You're a man who work. You don't mind us saying you work the land. You work during the night. You spend time in forests, and I've spent time with you. And you're not the kind of bloke who gets frightened easily, are you? And
no. It's like I say, that feeling.
What did you think it was then? What in your mind? Because obviously the ghost whisperer. Do you relate all that to some kind of ghostly presence, or do you think it was something else?
At the time, in my mind, I had it. It was death. It was death, sort of standing there. But that's the feeling. Now I don't know, because years later I found out that in that room people have had similar experiences.
Right. Okay.
So it could be something within that room, but just sitting, lying, watching that clock tick over, and just every second felt as though it was taking years to go past.
How old were you, Andrew?
I would have been about, let's say, college. I would have been 20 year
yeah.
old. Yeah.
Ever had any feelings like that, Rev? Have you ever been in that situation? Similar?
Not. I mean, yesterday there was somebody shouted me. And funny enough, earlier that morning somebody had shouted our lass. But I've never had that. Yeah, somebody where you can feel something lie down next to you and it tells you. I've never had that. I once woke up in a really good mood, and I had this voice come in my head telling me to kill myself. Now that didn't frighten me, but it made me realise just how easy it is for other things to try and influence you.
Influence, yeah.
Because I was at that moment, it was one of them. You know, when you wake up and you're in a bang, you know, you're full of it. You're going to hit it hard today. I've got this to do, and you know, go off with our lass somewhere and all that sort of stuff. And so there was no. I mean, you know me, Paul. I'm not. That doesn't even.
You're positive. You're positive.
Yeah.
You're all positive. Yeah.
So I just laughed it off. But that was, to anybody else, that could have been really, really sinister and maybe acted on it. You know what I mean? I don't know. But
anybody fragile, yeah, they could have tipped them. Do you know? Once again, a lot of these, Andrew, what I've spoke about before, but years ago when me and Mary were, I don't know, I'd been 19, 20. And we were at my mum's. My mum and dad had gone out to pub at 9:30, and we sat in front of this gas fire watching Fawlty Towers, of all things. So it must have been about 9 o'clock. Soon as they'd gone, sorry people, but soon as they'd gone out, I said to Mary, "Are we going upstairs?" You know, I don't have to paint a picture, but that's what I said. And we were just sat that far apart, and a voice between us said, "Why?" She looked at me. We didn't go nowhere. It was frightening. It didn't sound sinister. It didn't sound like something from an horror film. We said, "Why?" And she said, "You didn't say that, did you?" I said, "No, I didn't. No, and I knew she didn't. It was a male voice." And it said, "Why?" It frightened us to death. So, God, no, it's frightening. So jumping from that, then, have you heard any weird voices on the ghost walks or anything like that? Or yeah, have you used EVP?
No, around Durham, there is another walk, Durham Ghosts. He goes around and he does like a mini investigation. He's got EVP and all that. Mine is I go around, I just share the stories with people, share experiences. Because the EVP, I mean, I went on the other ghost walk, the other person, Dave Shotton, he invited us to go on. I went on, and the man with the gadgets and all that, because Dave's telling the stories, and there is Malcolm who's got all the gadgets, and he passes around people. And I had one of the gadgets. I says, "This wouldn't be no good for me going around." I says, "I'd be more interested in this, what's happening here, than telling the stories." Because we're walking around and those things coming out, there was words coming out which were linked.
So it got the spirit box then?
The type of spirit box, yeah. The places where he was going, we both know the stories. So when he was getting to the place, I knew what sort of story he was going to be sharing. And the spirit box was putting out words what were linked to what was going to be said, which was a bit weird.
How did that then? I don't mean affect you, but how did that make you feel? Did you think there's some validity then to this? Because I don't know whether there is or there isn't the spirit box.
See, I mean, you could say have the sort of primed the spirit boxes to go off exactly when you get there. But to do that, you would have to time exactly the walk to get you to there. And if, like, when I'm going around on the walk, I sort of try and time it to get within 3 hours. Sometimes I can get less than 3 hours. Sometimes it can take 4 hours to get around because people stop and asking questions and that. So I can never sort of really work exactly where I'm going to be in one place. So for him, it wouldn't be sort of possible for them to
it'd be difficult to pre-record a spirit box, I would think, wouldn't it? You know what I mean? It'd be a difficult thing to do.
So, yeah.
You'd have to be working to a complete on a time frame, wouldn't he?
Yeah. You would. Yeah, you
You've
would.
got a little spirit at back of you there, Andrew.
Yeah. Yeah, Dexter.
If anybody's looked on live stream, Mick Park, who a friend of Rev's as well, and Les, but Mick come up onto cliff tops with me, and we had EMF meter, and we've been taking them up there for years, and I've never talked about them because we've had no results. But it'd be pointless just saying we're putting this on them and nothing's happened. But I went up with Mick. We'd had a few happenings just over a few days before, and he says, "Let's film this." And as I'm asking it questions, and it's there on the shorts, it's on one of them on Truth Proof live stream. I'm asking it questions, and it's just going off the scale. And then I'm saying, "Can you stop, please?" And it stops. We don't just leave it a second and say, "Can you start again?" And leave it about 8 seconds. So, "Can you start again, please?" Starts again. Really strange. But then the interaction stopped. It almost thought, in my head, I'm thinking it's showing me what it can do, and now it's not playing. I've just shown you I can do this. Maybe I'm being a bit green. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. To me, did you see that one, Rev? Did you see that?
Yeah, I was talking to Mick about it the other day, actually.
And what were your views when you'd watched it?
Well, it's definitely responding to you. And from what Mick was telling me, there was obviously a lot more than on the short,
loads more.
It was responding to you only, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And what we did, this is all about proof, Andrew, and what we all go through. And I know you know this. I'm not telling you this because I know you know 100%. So does Rev, Les. As we were walking down, and it's about a mile and a half down to where we ended up finishing late, going towards midnight. I've got a bag full of cameras, all turned off, and it's doing all this. And I became aware, because you can see what I've got as Mick's filming, that people are going to say, "Well, actually, electronic equipment, it's this, it's that." So you're looking for as much meat round the bone, as much proof as you can get. So we put the cameras down at one at stand. There's nobody up there at that hour. Walked away and literally just got nothing except this in my hand. And I try and keep this hand in view, which might look a bit odd, but that's because I don't want anybody to think I've got some electrical gadget when I'm flicking it on, because everybody's looking for some kind of reason why that can't be possible. Do you know what I mean? You're cheating, and it definitely did respond. It really did, and we've not had that kind of interaction since, really. So yeah, the combination of Mick and myself.
Yeah, with spirit boxes, I think it's slightly different. I think they can be manipulated very easily.
Really?
If you think about your phone, right? Your phone's listening to everything that you do now, and it's giving you products, isn't it? That's what Google does with all that sort of stuff. So the way that the spirit box works, from my understanding, is it's scanning different channels all the time. Now, depending on let's say, for instance, if they're able to make a spirit box, I know you can get apps for your phone and stuff, and that's then got access to everything that you've talked about prior to you turning it on. It can then use its algorithm to scan the right channels to pick up. I mean, a lot of them scan radio stations and stuff, and it seems to pick up what you're saying. So to me, I kind of think that maybe with spirit boxes, it's different to the EMF readings, because that's just picking up the electric that's getting pushed towards it. But with spirit boxes, I think it could be quite easily manipulated.
And I don't know what Andrew thinks to that. You could be right, but I'm wondering if they're the sort of analog. Are they spirit boxes? Are they going to? They're not digital. The ones that Bob Brown bought one. He paid a daft amount of money for it, to be honest with you. When Peter Masters, who's electronics expert, who does a lot of testing with us, and that took it to bits and had a look at it, and it were pretty basic. So I know where you're coming from, and there's probably different variants of them, but this thing, what Bob had paid a lot of money for, were pretty basic. So I'm just wondering, I don't know. We got no results with it, so I'm not saying it can't be manipulated, or it can. We actually got no results with it, but
it seems to be quite variable, doesn't it? Depending on what the app is or what spirit box you use, it seems to be either you get a lot or you don't get very much.
Yeah.
So
it's not something that you're thinking of using or in your talks then, Andrew?
No. Like I say, I mean, we through the years doing investigations and that, like the EMF meters. One example was we were once in the Castle Keep in Newcastle. The EMF meter went crazy, and it was going full pelt. It was a real good response. For about 10 minutes, right, what's happening here? Then we realised train station is about half a mile away. Every time a train was coming in, you couldn't see the train. You couldn't see the train.
It knew.
Every time the train was coming, it was a signal there. The thing, and I mean the trains. Yeah, there is still the diesel trains, but most of them are electric now. As they're coming through, was causing that to pulsate.
So in a way, you're a bit of a purist with this, which is no bad thing, is it? You know,
yeah,
you're keeping it basic.
Keep it basic. I mean, the ghost walk. It's to sort of let people sort of hear the stories of the place, and if they want to go on and do investigations, that's great. I've said if they do go investigate, do look and they find anything, please let us know, because I do want to sort of build up and to see what is happening. Because
have you discovered new stories while you've been going on your walk?
Yeah. New stories. Every so often I pop into shops and sort of just ask if there's anything happening around there. Some people have stuff happening. There was one, I popped in the shop to ask, and she said, "Oh, there's nothing happening in the shop." She said, "But I did have a funny experience once." And she told us down now it is. It was supposed to be the new council office, but when it was built, they spent a fortune on it, and then the new council who came in decided they didn't want it, so they sold it to the university. But that area used to be a car park, the Sands car park. And she says she parked down there once. Her and her dad had gone somewhere, walking down. A bit like, you know, when you said about the iron, the forge, when you walked past and you saw the woman in the house.
Blacksmiths,
Yeah. She'd walked down, she'd passed this house, and she says she could see a gap through the fence into the door, into the garden behind. She says there was a party going on. And she says it looked like there were the clergy or something like that. And took no notice. I just saw these, went past, came back down. And she thought, I wonder if that party's still going on. And she looked. There was no house there. But she'd seen a gap in the fence. She was looking. She was seeing the house. She was seeing through the door into the garden where there was this party going on. And then when she came back, she says she'd only been in Durham maybe half an hour, came back. And she thought, oh, I wonder if that party's still going on, and passed. And there was, where she'd seen, there was no house there.
So what are we looking at there then? Is it a time slip? What do you think we're looking at with something like that, Rev? Unless it's just somebody who's been really quick and tidied up.
Well, that's possible. But my wife had a similar experience where she saw a castle being stormed. She said it was under full siege, and it was her mum and dad were driving through Warwickshire. I can't remember who they were visiting, but when they came back the same way, there was no castle there.
No.
And it's the energy from stuff seems to be not just humans, or animals, but vehicles, buildings. All these things are seen as, you know, and disappear with no explanation. And
you just said it then. But as you were saying it, castle, and I was just going to say to you, do you think we've got modern things? And then you said vehicles, because somebody told me that they were driving back from Scarborough and they saw wind turbines, which there is at Lisset and and further over, but they saw them on way to Scarborough, and on way from Scarborough, and when they drove back, they're not there. They never work it out. They told me this weird story, and it's not really doesn't sound exotic or remotely paranormal, but it's a strange one, isn't it? We want to jump to this Durham Puma in a moment, Andrew, because I know you've got a bit of knowledge on that. But before we do, let's just stay with. I saw Kev Evers in chat, and we might have covered it, so just cut it dead if we have. What's the most scary story that you've ever been told? I know you said you've got one that's a bit personal to you that you're not going to talk about, but what's the most scary one you've been told?
Let's see.
Sounds like there's a lot. We just have one.
No, because most of them are not scary. Most of them are not scary.
Okay.
There could be. It was scary for the person who worked with me dad.
Yeah.
My dad, he was a pitman, worked down the pits, and like I mean, I once said to him, "What? Have you ever seen any ghosts or anything down the pits? What's it like?" He says, "The only time it gets scary down the pits is if your light goes out, because you're in pitch black. You just can't see anything." He says, "That's the only time it gets scary." But he says, there was a time, he says, it was me and this other lad, he says, we're working, and he says, one is a buddy system. He says, one was at the face, you and the coal, putting it into the tubs. He says, the other one was doing stuff at the front, and every so often he would pull the tub to the front, and they were going to share the sort of the money, because they would get paid for the tubs.
Yeah. So
my dad says, he was down the front, you and the coal. He says, the tub got half full. And he says, the tub disappeared, went. A bit later, it came back. He started using again. Same thing happened again. Half full, the tub disappeared. So my dad said, thinking, like, I'm only getting half of the tub here. So he took a walk up to see what was going on. And the lad says, well, you signalled. You told us, because the signal was a light flash.
The light,
with the lamp.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, you signalled to see pull the tub. He says, no, he says, the tubs are half empty. He says, I wouldn't do that. So the lad says, well, I'll go down to the front. He says, I'll you the coal. So my dad's watching. He sees the light, pulls the tub's half empty. The lad comes up. He says, what you doing? He says, well, you shone the light. And the lad says, well, no. He says, it's like you. He says, I didn't shine the light. And so the lad said to me, Dad, wait, who's shining the light? He says, well, it's the other ones. He said, what do you mean, the other ones? He says, there's only two working down. He says, I know, but there's the ghosts of the other miners who've died down in the pits and that. And my dad says, his mate's face just sort of went white and the colour just dropped. He says, I'm not, he said, I'm not staying down here. And my dad says, for the rest of the time he worked at that pit, that lad who he worked with worked on top. He took a pay cut because working down was you got a bit more money because it was more dangerous.
From a mining family,
he took a pay cut. Yeah, he took a pay cut, and the lad worked on top for the rest of the time we worked there. He just wouldn't go down at the pit because of that.
And just before we leave that story, then these tubs are on tracks, so nobody can.
Not on tracks,
You know, for people that don't know, I know there'll be a lot of people that do. But you're not going to just drag one out of the way. You're not just going to move one. And what would the weigh? What, half full?
Well, it'd be a fair weight in them. I wouldn't like to see it.
Yeah, but so what we're saying is that it's going to hold probably a ton.
Probably just shy of a ton.
It's on a track. So it can't go nowhere. Yeah, it's fascinating. No. So let's jump then to the Durham Puma. So we're talking about big cats in UK. Tell us what you know about that, Andrew. So we jump away from ghosts for a moment.
No problem. Well, like I say, I've every subject, paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, anything I've got interest in. Big cats, I got an interest in the big cats in, let's say, 84, 85, I would be about 13, 14-year-old. And school, we were reading a book in English, The Runaways. Victor, I'm forgetting his second name, Victor somebody. And this was about a young lad. He was a runaway, but was also escaped panther or leopard on Salisbury's plane. That's where the story was at. We're reading the story, and the English teacher told us that there was big cats seen around the country as well. Told us, so that got us interested. For years, anything in the papers I would collect. Anyway, years later, my dad had told us about something what happened to my uncle. The village where I lived, Burnhope, my uncle was out walking his dog. Jess was walking up the track. Jess stops and freezes. She goes behind him. He's one, because usually if there's sort of rabbits or fox or deer or anything what moves, she tries to get after them. But she went and she was cowering behind him. And he didn't know what's happening. He thought, oh, maybe there's a bigger dog coming down. Because if there was a bigger dog, she was a bit scared. He says, and as he saw this cat-like creature walk across the path, look at him, and then just carry on walking up and disappear into the undergrowth. My dad told his friend. My dad and his friends had a few words. Because his friend says, "What was your uncle drinking?"
There we go. Yeah.
My uncle wasn't like that. Anyway, a few weeks later, my dad went over to see his friend, and the friend says, "Look, I have to apologise." He said, I didn't believe there was big cats in Britain. He said, I've seen them. He says, he had the house where he is, he's got a bit small holding. And he's shutting up his sheep at night. He had a few sheep, shutting up the sheep at night. And there was a big cat prowling. The fence, it's a big high fence. He says, this cat was prowling on the other side of the fence. He says, I saw it. He says, I ran, waving my arms to chase it. And he says, this cat wasn't bothered about us. He says, I just looked at us and then just stalked off into the woods. Ever since, he's had a few sightings, over the years, he has had a few sightings of this cat around the area. Now, when I started where I'm at now, the job I'm at now, I was on my middle year. And I always ask people different...
farming, Andrew, yeah? We're moving from ghosts, farming.
Yeah, farming, yeah. I was at college, I was on sort of 3-year course. So the first year is the basic. Second year, you have to go out and work on a farm. Third year, you come back to do your final year. I was on middle year out on a farm. I always ask anybody I meet, have they got anything unusual in that? And one of the lads, he told us about big cat sighting. We'd had some cows in the field that had calves. The boss had gone out to check them on the morning. He saw that there's a new calf. So he checked it on the morning. It was okay. Checked on the night. It was okay. He went back the next day. The cow is blaring. She's sort of running up along the fence line looking for a calf. So he knew the calf's either in the ditch or it's sort of there's something wrong with it. So he went to try and look for it. He found it, and it's right next to the fence, and it's got marks on it. So he thought poachers had been out because around the area there is a lot of poaching. So he thought people had been out with the dogs, and the dogs had attacked the calf. So he phoned up the police. The police sent out a wildlife liaisons officer. Eddie Bell. In the Northeast, he does a lot of preservation of wildlife and stuff like that. He used to be in the police. He had this job, but he also collects incidents of big cat sightings. So he came out to investigate, and he said, can I take it away to get examined by the vets? He says, because them marks, he said, I don't think they're dogs. He says, the way it's been killed, it's not a dog. He says, it's the throat was marked, which is been suffocated and not ripped, like what a cat would do, would suffocate. But the boss said, wait, it's no good to me. He says, something's killed it. He says, I think it's dogs. Whether it's a dog or a cat, he says, it's going to make no difference to me. He says, the calf's dead. He says, if you want to get it examined, you can take it. He says, well, I'm not going to send it to be told what I know. And Eddie Bell went on, he investigated a load of sightings and that. And big cats all around the region. Now, 2001, the farm again, the buildings were getting sold on. and there was one of the builders that had problems, people breaking in, stealing stuff. And so the builders had asked one of the workers if he would stay. The house was almost ready. So he would sort of stay in the house to sort of watch in case anybody came to break in again. And they also had a Rottweiler on a large zip line, so the dog could cover the whole yard. And his job was to feed the dog, make sure it was okay, feed and water it. He heard the dog barking one night, and he came out and he says the dog was upright, the chain is taut. He says this dog is barking at something in the undergrowth. So he's thinking, well, he went down, he shone the torch, and he got eyes coming back. He walked down, and he got a clearer view, and he says it was a cat. He says this cat would have been about the size of the Rottweiler. So when the Rottweiler was on the 4 legs, it would be about that size. He says this cat wasn't bothered about this. This cat wasn't bothered about the Rottweiler. He says it was just standing there. It was sort of standing its ground. It just wasn't bothered.
Black.
So all I did.
A Puma or black or beige? Did he say? I know.
He said browny black colour.
Yeah.
With being dark, he couldn't really see it. Yeah, but like I say, around the Durham area, over the years there has been a lot of sightings. I mean, the last one I heard of was about 6 weeks ago, up in Weardale. Somebody, I'm saying Weardale, up near Hamsley. Somebody had been walking around there, and they're supposed to have seen one across the path. Yeah, so
they're seen regular around our area, to be honest with you. And myself and Bob Brown saw one 2017 crossing road. Interested in Rev's views on this. I think I know what we're going to hear, but maybe.
Well, yeah, it's. I mean, as you'll know, Andrew, when a dog attack happens, it's usually either their arse end that's ripped out, or flaps of skin. They never. The sheep normally gets away, don't they? But they're in a bad state. With big cats, they either go for the neck, or they actually bite the whole of the nozzle and suffocate it, like you were saying. So there's a very clear difference. You can see quite clearly the difference. And I know of one of the forestry rangers over at Cropton. He had a sighting a couple of years ago. Then maybe a week or so after that, somebody else at Cropton saw another black cat, and then a friend of mine a few miles away, he saw one morning when he was up having his morning coffee, and he was just looking across the valley, and from his farmhouse it was just walking up, doing its thing. You know what I mean? So that they're about everywhere.
They are.
No, sorry, Andrew, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think like they've got a territory, but I think it's sort of they work it in a circle, because like there'll be reports around here, then it'll go dead for ages.
That's right. That was going to be my question. Has anybody got any views on why they drop off radar and then suddenly appear again?
It's following its routine, isn't it? It's pattern. They might animals used to migrate. Obviously, it's slightly different in Britain because we've been isolated for so long. But everywhere else, look at swallows. You know, they come up from South Africa. Yeah. We have butterflies that fly from Morocco. You know, so they all have their set routines. And I guess it seems to be. I mean, the cat that I saw down in Weggles, it was stockier and shorter than the ones that you would see, say, in the jungles or in Africa or any, you know what I mean, in any of these other places where they come from. And I believe scientifically it's now become its own subspecies. So it's become a British variant of the big cats now. So because they're isolated on the island, they've got, you know, very limited gene capacity coming in. So if they're in a family group, they're going to be into breeding. And there was an island up in Scotland. It was infested with rats, and they kind of left it because they thought they'd just the interbreeding would eventually weaken the genes and that'd be it. But it turned out they developed a way
Brand
around
new
it within their own body to get past that.
Yeah.
So it's maybe the genetic pool doesn't have to be as wide as we've been led to believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, maybe. I mean, but rats are prolific breeders, aren't they? Probably
Oh,
more
yeah.
than a cat. But yeah, I get that. Got a report today, literally today, of somebody who shot a big cat. I've got to get more information on it, but he said its tail were about 12-inch long. You know, we're in these big sweeping tails.
Yeah.
Said it was a stubby tail about 12-inch long, and we've primarily done ghosts, and I don't want Les to come in just yet. I'm sure he will do, but we've got to touch on this. Is it the Bowlam Lake Bigfoot, if possible?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to talk about it.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bowlam Lake Bigfoot was something what happened 2003. It was the summer of 2002 into winter 2002-2003. Story goes, there was Bowlam Lake. There's a fishing lake. It's a catch and return. You fish at dusk till dawn up in Northumberland. It's a beautiful place. It's say it'll be about maybe 100 acres. The pond, a woodland around. It has Iron Age settlement at the top. Two lads were out fishing. Finish the day because they have to get off by dusk. They come in. There's a raised platform, so it keeps you out the mud. So they're walking along this wooden raised platform. One of them turns around to say something to his mate. He sees something behind him. There was supposed to be a thing 8 foot tall, as broad. Sees that, he just off and away. His mate's thinking, what's happening here? Turns around to see where he's a lot closer to this thing. Drops all his fishing gear, off and away. They do eventually come back to pick the stuff up. They described it, like I said, about 8 foot tall, red glowing eyes. Then the first lad, a few months later, he came back. Him and his girlfriend were camping in the woods. You're not supposed to. There's a ranger. If you get caught, you'd be told to get out. So they'll go after they knew the ranger was finished. So they snuck into the place, set up camp. They were going to be away before the ranger came. Anyway, they're in the tent. They hear a noise outside. He opens the tent, looks out, sees legs. At first he thinks the ranger's found him. He's going to be in trouble. But these legs are sort of massive. And he's sort of looking up, and there's this big, massive thing just standing in front of him. He does a noble thing, opens the tent, he runs, he leaves his girlfriend in the tent to face whatever it is. Eventually he does go back to get her. I mean, she was, this was the first time ever she'd been in this wood, so she didn't know where it was. She didn't know what was happening. He's ran off. She was in the tent. But anyway, there was investigation done around the area.
Police investigation.
Pardon?
Police investigation, or
no. CFZ came.
Right.
Centre Frontage Zoology. They came down to do investigation around the area, and they were there, I think, a full week. And as part of Twilight Worlds, we went to help with the investigation. Now, while we were there was a young woman and child. She came to share her story. I think she was called Naomi, and because there was sort of big advertising on a news report on the telly. She'd seen the news report and thought, I'll pop down to see what's going on. Now, the car park where we were, she'd get in there before we'd get in there, and she said she'd had a walk around the park, and she'd come back in. All of a sudden, that's the feeling again. Everything just goes silent. She says everything just went silent. She says, and then it was sort of no emotion, anything. She says, but then I saw this figure just standing there. She says, I was terrified. She said, it sort of frozen at the spot with fear. And eventually she says, she broke out of that and she went out the other way. She went around the other way, walked to where there's, because a little calf, she waited there. And then eventually she came back to her car. But she said it was birds singing, then all of a sudden noise just went. and she saw that figure.
Any views on that?
But over the years,
Yeah, are they still together?
I think she's with the Bigfoot. He was a better person than the one who left her.
But
Yeah, that's.
Is it renowned for these kind of sightings, or is this just isolated to that year?
No, it's since then there has been a lot of sightings, but is it a case of somebody sees something and then it's sort of left a mark, so people go to see there? The park itself, it's supposed to have a white lady walks around, and one of the explanations for this sighting is we once went up just for a look up, and one of the park rangers was around, and one of the group I was with, she asked the park ranger, have they seen anything? He said, oh no. He says, the only thing was, he says, a few years ago, he says, I was walking around the park early morning, opened the gates. He says, I saw this figure walking towards us. He says, I nearly crapped myself. He says, this figure was about 7 foot tall, 7 foot tall. He said, I nearly crapped myself. He says, eventually he turned up. He says, what it was, there was just across the way, there is a Buddhist monastery. And there was a lad, he'd gone to the monastery to become a Buddhist. And to cleanse himself, one of the things he had to do every morning before dawn, he had to walk around the park 3 or 4 times. Well, this lad was about 7 foot tall, and he says, the warden says, in the middle of the night, he didn't have a torch with him. The lad was just walking around, and he says, I just saw this figure come towards it. He says, I dropped myself. Right, yeah.
It's good to be that level, though, that we're looking for it. We've got to look for absolutely earthly explanations. That's what we've got to do. That's what you're doing, even with this vested interest. And I know it's what Rev does, and that's what we all do. But what do you think they are? What do you think the Bigfoot is, Andrew? Do you think it's flesh and blood? Do you think it's got the attributes? You've just said that everything went silent, everything changed. What do you think? What do you think they are?
I don't think that. I mean, in Britain, you have to take the size of Britain and that the colony, the size of a colony, what it would need to support and to keep on going. There would be more sightings. There would be bodies found. I don't think it's flesh and blood. I mean, a lot of these sightings, you sort of find a lot of these sightings, and need to, like I said, I need settlement. The need a settlements or
near earthworks and ancient places. So throw that one at Rev. What do you think they are?
Well, from my personal experience, there were no tracks. There was no sign of anything that had been there. I mean, I didn't even see any legs. The way that my whatever it was that I saw, the fuck knows what, it just came. It was like a torch beam going down the side of a house. It was just so smooth. It didn't step over anything. And in fact, Mick sent me a link to one of a documentary called Hoodoo Tall, and this guy's in Arizona, in Sedona, at the Bradshaw Ranch, and the footprints that he's finding, some of them are indented 2-inch into the compressed soil.
Almost like it's made of lead.
Yeah, it's like it's been dropped. You know what I mean? It's but for the size of whatever it was that I saw, I would have expected. I mean, I could, like I've told you before, I could follow a grasshopper. You know, I was that in tune to stuff when I was there. It's almost like there's two aspects to it. There's like a very physical aspect that some people see.
Yeah, it's all right.
And then there's this non-physical aspect of it makes absolutely no sense to what we know in terms of what we've been told about reality. And the only way that I can kind of work through it is if we accept that what we've been told about scientific, say atoms, the elements, we're told that they're set, and I don't believe that. I believe you can bend them, because it's frequency that holds them together, and you can stretch a frequency, you can bend it, you can move it, and it's almost like that seems to be happening. And whether they're generated by a natural phenomenon, an energy force that created us, or whatever, you know, the soul, or whether it's some kind of, I mean, I personally, what I saw, I believe that to be some kind of manipulation of advanced technology that was directed there. And certainly some stuff that's happened before and after that, it seems more and more that's the case with me. But a lot of the cases, there are tracks, there's been hairs recovered, which have been unidentifiable to any type of bear or any creature that we have on record. Yeah, it's absolutely, the moment that I start truly following what I believe with it, you then see physical evidence, and it's like, yeah, it's an head scratcher, isn't it? But my initial,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, my initial heart feeling is it's a manipulation of advanced technology that we don't know about, and but then when you read ancient texts, ancient scripts, they talk about they were here first, and
but
you know what I mean?
Is that ancient technology then, Rev, so far down the line that it is going to be there in them ancient manuscripts and ancient writings? And I don't know, but shall we jump to Les and see what he's got for us? And is it a chalk ice, Les?
It could be a chalk ice break. I think we've gone by the chalk ice break now, Paul. But I've got to thank everybody for sending the questions in tonight. I am going to do my best to try and get as many out in this session as I can.
We've got 15 minutes.
Yeah, Midnight, as you can probably see on the screen, is asking, has Andy had anything following him home?
Attachments or?
No.
No, that's
short but sweet.
That's a short one, yeah. Okay, quick one for you, Paul. I think from Danny Egan. Paul, have you?
Yeah, definitely,
would you ever consider
Danny.
Doing truth-proof books for your audio?
Yeah, it has to be done. Yeah, definitely would consider doing that. And that's interesting. Well, I don't mean tonight, but we throw that kind of question out there. Would it be better with somebody else doing them, or me having an attempt in my daughter's recording studio? And I'm not saying I want to do it. I'm just saying, what would people prefer? So anyway, next question. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, thank you. Let's have a look. We've got from Chris Evers, Outer Limits magazine. Question for Andy. Tell us about Jimmy Allen. And on a personal note, it's good to see you on here, Andy, says Chris Evers.
Well, it's all about the bar, isn't he? That was going to be one of the questions, but keep it as concise as possible because we've got, sorry, Chris, but we've got a few questions to get through.
Okay.
Right. Quick.
Yeah, go on, Andrew.
Yep. Yeah, quickly. Jimmy Allen's, it's a bar in Durham. It's called Jimmy Allen's after a person who spent some time there. Jimmy Allen's, before it was a bar, it was prison cells. It was the Birtwell North Prison for Durham before the new prison was built. Jimmy Allen, he was, if you check him up, he played the Northumberland bagpipes. He was resident bagpipe player for Annick Castle for the Percy family. He wrote his own music for the bagpipes. You can't find his music online. He got chased from the Percy family because he was a great bagpipe player, but he was also a gambler, a drinker, and a womanizer. He had a load of little Jimmies running about. The Percy family didn't like that, so they got rid of him. He went to something else, what he was very good at: horse rustling, cattle rustling, and sheep rustling. At the age of 73, he got caught stealing a horse at Gateshead. He got arrested. He was going to be tried in Berwick. If he'd been tried in Berwick, chances are the story wouldn't probably never happened, because the Berwick trial was you got hung and then you tried afterwards. He was sent back to the Assizes Court in Durham. He was found guilty. He was going to be hung, but he had influential friends who got him a life sentence. So he spent the rest of his life in the prison cells, which is now Jimmy Allen's. At the age of 80 in 1810, November the 13th, he died. November the 17th, he got a pardon. Too late for him, but the Prince Regent had signed a pardon for him. But he's said to still play the bagpipes. In Jimmy Allen's, people hear the sound of bagpipes playing. along Elford Bridge on a night time. If you're going along there late at night, people hear the sound of bagpipes being played along that bridge. That's the quick version of the story.
You.
Wow.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
That's a great
and
story.
thanks, Chris, for the question.
Yeah,
Well, let's
great
hit us with
question,
another.
yeah. Let's go with not so much a question, this one, but for you, Paul, can you buy one of those Night People t-shirts, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we had some at the Awakening conference, and I'll speak. Don runs website for us. He puts everything on. We'll get some of these shirts put up onto the website, or contact me, Gavin. Yeah, contact me. There's loads of information. You'll get the email address.
I've got Closet of Curiosities. I've been hearing my phone ring for 2 weeks, Paul.
That's weird. Is that this is Sasha, isn't it? Yeah, and I don't think it's tongue in cheek because I said I'd get a ring, but no, seriously, I've definitely. It's become apparent. I'm doing stuff and I can hear a phone ringing, and I don't mean I can hear it audibly. There's a phone ringing, and I don't hear voices, people. I've not been diagnosed for any like that, but I can hear a phone. That's why I said it earlier. So I'd be interested if Sasha's heard something like that. It's interesting.
I quite often tell our lass that the phone's about to ring before it rings.
Yeah, it's weird that, and it's like when the dog goes and stands at window, and 10 minutes later somebody arrives, and he kind of knows they're coming. You know, preempting things.
Forgive me if this question has already been answered earlier on. Has Andy ever experienced anything at his own house? And that's coming from Dark Angel.
The only thing I probably would say is when that story I told you before about Socks, our dog, dying. When we heard the barking, that's the only thing I would say I've experienced. Yeah.
Okay, and I think so. Look, did we have? Did you ask this one earlier, Paul? What I'm going to put on the screen from Kevin Evers. Good evening. Just wondering what is Andy's favourite ghost story or legend to tell. What's your favourite one, Andy?
Have this one because it was the scariest.
You had the most scary one, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, my favourite one. There's a fair few. See, there's one I've only heard it, found out about 6 months ago, and I've got a warped sense of humour. It's just sort of hits my humour.
Well, you've got to tell us, else we'll be shutting shop soon.
Yep. The Durham Cathedral. I heard a story. There's two versions. Well, the one I heard first was there was a man. He was in a pub. He had a bet. Somebody bet him that he wouldn't be able to jump off Durham Cathedral and survive. He took the bet. Went up the top of the cathedral. He had a soft landing. He dived off, landed on the soft landing. He survived. As he was climbing out, somebody bet him that he couldn't do it again.
Yeah.
So he says, right, hold me hat. I'll go and do that. He went back up the stairs. Durham Cathedral, there's about 260, 270 stairs to get right to the top. So while he's going up the top of the stairs, his wife said right there to the crowd down the bottom, look, when my husband dived off there last time, he nearly hit his head off this side. Can we move that just a bit further that way? So I know he's not going to hit his head, because she says he nearly hit his head. So the crowd help move the jump spot. He goes up, not knowing this, gets to the top, jumps off, misses. He misses the land stop, so he's killed. Now, there's supposed to be a ghost what rises from where the spot where he fell, gets up and looks around. I think he's looking around for his wife. He's not very happy with her for moving there. Yeah. But the other version is that there was a festival on back in the 1600s, and there was a tightrope walker going to walk from one side of the cathedral to the other outside. As he's walking along, it's supposed to be a gust of wind or something, and he slipped and fell. And he fell. The bishop of Durham, he paid for the gravestone to be carved and on the gravestone they carved a bag of money because they hadn't paid him before he started his tightrope walking, so they paid him in the afterlife by carving the thing on the stone. Like I say, it's just my sort of sense of humour, the one with the wife and the husband and him diving off there.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Come on, Les.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story, is that, Andy? And I've got to thank everybody for coming in with the questions tonight. I am reached the practically all but one question. Just going to leave that one for a second. I've got to thank Alison for doing the moderating tonight. And and Revenant, of course, for coming on. But most of all, I mean, the stories that you brought out tonight, Andy, have been really, really, really fascinating. Don't you agree, guys?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Andy, where, obviously we're in Durham, but where can people contact you if you want to book to go on a ghost walk, or when are they commencing? Because we've just done harvest, so I imagine you're starting again, are you?
We're starting again. The first walk starts this Saturday. That's fully booked. The next two walks are fully booked. The next available place would be the 21st of September. If you go to Walking with the Ghosts of Durham, that's where you'll find it. Or if you look on Facebook for Andrew Ross, find us there. Either them to messages, and that's where you'll see all the details. Yeah.
And on an average, we've got 10 people per walk. What's the maximum you could have?
I set it for the best sort of for me to look after people and also for people to enjoy it. 20 is the most I take. Last year when I first started, it's Halloween, I think I took 28 people, and I realised 28 because some people can't hear all the story, so they're not getting the enjoyment. And part of the idea is to have an enjoyable walk around Durham, hear a few stories, see the beautiful sights, and hopefully go away and be a bit more inquisitive about what's happening out there.
Brilliant. It made me want to go. You've sold it, mate. Honestly, thank you.
Yeah. Brilliant.
No, thank you for having us on.
No, we've got another question, I think.
I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a link in the description, Andrew, for the Facebook page where they can get more information. And
right, thank you.
Yeah. So I guess let's have a look then. This question from Midnight. My last question, definitely on the list.
For Les.
Yeah, question for Les. And what has been your most interesting encounter since filming with Paul? Well, I've got to say, I don't think I've really been in anything paranormal or anything like that, ghostly or otherwise, Dogman, Bigfoot or anything. But I've got to say, one of the most funniest times, I've got to say, is when we went filming, and it was, I think it was with you, Jeff, but I think it was with you, Revenant.
Did it involve water?
And when you went up to your waist in water, and the camera was rolling from my point of view, but unfortunately not quite facing the right way. But we do
I held my camera in there.
Yeah, we do get the aftermath of you swearing, but all you said was, "At least I kept the camera dry," but you was soaking from your chest downwards.
Just I know we're tight for time, but you heard the growl.
Oh, the growling. Yeah, we definitely had that one. Thanks for reminding me on that one.
You heard the growl. You and Chris Wright.
Me and Chris Wright did actually hear the growl, and that.
You were cuddling, weren't you?
Yeah, you were cuddling with Chris.
I was doing something to get out the camera, what you guys couldn't see, but yeah, probably. And that is in the some of that is in the film The Wolflands. And by the way, The Wolflands. You can probably see on the screen, it's behind me. You can get it on Amazon. They can buy it from the website if they want to on the DVD. Paul, tell people what the website address is.
Website truthproof.uk. You can purchase Wolflands DVD. I think Les is organising Blu-ray. It's probably a few weeks away at the moment. You can get the Truthproof books from the website, and you can look at the digital downloads via Kindle on Amazon, obviously, and Amazon Prime for Wolflands. And if you do watch it and you enjoy it and you've got it on Prime, leave us a review if you want to. Likewise, if you're watching the live stream now and you've watched it for weeks and weeks and never subscribed, it costs nothing. just subscribe. Let's try and get this rolling. We are going to add more content, and we're going to do more live streams. So
Yeah.
and
Hit
more
that like
input
button.
from Rev. Yeah,
Hit the
more
like
input
button.
from Rev.
And hit the like button, as
Yeah.
Rev says, yeah. And
Yeah.
for those who missed it at the top of the hour, we are planning on doing a question and answer on Monday, 7 p.m. On this channel. So, yeah, if you can get Monday, tune in then.
What we'll be doing is just picking some names out to chat. We'll have some things to talk about, obviously, but I'm just looking at names now.
Some freebies,
yeah. We've got Ronald Booth there. I don't know whether Ronald's got a story to tell or whether it's just an interest, but we'll invite him to just give us his area of interest. And you don't have to participate, Ronald. You're not going to be put on the spot. It's just a name I've read. Simon Riley, likewise.
Yeah.
So let's just see if we can get some.
On that note,
rolling.
Paul. Yep, sorry, Paul. Yeah, on that note, we've run out of time.
Right,
and we're over time. And got to thank the guests. I've got to thank you, Paul. I've got to thank the Rev. And
thank you.
Of course, we've got
Andrew, thank you. Rev, thank you. Les, brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So on that note, folks, we'll see you next time. And the next time will be Monday. Okay.
Right, thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Andrew, thank you.
Bye.
No, thank you. Thank you for having us on.
It's been a pleasure, mate.